the 1980s, slasher movies were pretty popular. You had A Nightmare on Elm Street with Freddy Krueger, and you had Friday the 13th with Jason, and it felt like both films had annual releases. Now, none of these films were brilliant, but that didn't mean they were not a good watch. So when seeing Splatterhouse in an arcade in early 1989, I thought it was a game based on the Friday the 13th movie. I mean, it's not hard to see where the confusion comes from. The main character wears this mask, which looks a little like Jason's ice hockey mask, and he seems to wear a boiler suit, kind that Jason favoured. But the game is in no way connected with Friday the 13th movie at all. Splatterhouse is an arcade-style, side-scrolling beat-em-up with platform elements, in which the player controls Rick, a parapsychology college major who is trapped inside West Mansion. After his resurrection by the Terror Mask, Rick makes his way through the mansion, fighting off hordes of creatures in a vain attempt to save his girlfriend Jennifer from a grisly fate. Similar to many side-scrolling beat-em-up games, Rick can only move in a two-dimensional environment. He has the ability to jump and can punch and kick. Rick also has a special attack, where he will perform a drop kick that sends him skidding along the ground, damaging any enemies he hits. All of the levels consist of walking left to right, with occasional auto-scrolling segments. However, alternative pathways through sections of the house are possible by falling down through holes or jumping onto ladders. In this way, branching gameplay is possible, if only prevalent in the middle levels. Levels culminate in boss fights that take place in a single room. Unlike traditional side-scrolling fighters, boss fights have varying objectives and styles. Unlike most arcade games in the genre, Splatterhouse sends players back to checkpoints after losing lives or receiving a game over. Discouraging credit feeding is a method of overcoming the various challenges. The beat-em-up aspect is very reminiscent of other single-plane games like Vigilante, where each enemy is dispersed with only one or two hits, and so it appears very basic at first. But what drives the player along is the gore. Well, in 1988, when this game was released, this was considered gory. The other thing that moves the player along is a wall of slime that just appears if you hang around too long in one place. But I found my motivation to continue was driven by my desire to see what gory features would appear next. The visuals are nice for the time, while not being blessed with an abundance of colour due to the setting of the game. Everything is easily made out on the screen. And for a game of this type, there are some really neat animation touches, like the way these things splatter against the wall in this level. And also the water ripple effect around Rick as he moves through the flooded basement. Being a horror themed game, there are some classic 70s and 80s horror style tropes, such as the chainsaw being wielded by the masked goon at the end of this level, a bit like Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and lots of death and destruction littered throughout most of the indoor levels. The whole thing carried out the whole horror vibe very well. Of course, the key to horror movies is jump scares, moments when the sound creates the fear, and Splatterhouse does not do that. But the tunes are pretty accurate to the genre, sounding a little creepy and terrifying, with some good use of sound effects for the broken glass and shattered mirrors adding to the atmosphere. The gameplay is pretty basic, but it is by no means an easy game to finish, and it also has this kind of false summit in the game. When you defeat this level boss, it kinda looks like the game has finished, but it's only the halfway point, and from that point there is also a change in the music. The tunes pick up the pace to signify the urgency to get to the end and save Jennifer. This game wasn't a game I played a lot, especially with the likes of Golden Axe about, but I did play it from time to time, and it's a great little game, very challenging but immense fun. I think my mates liked it a lot more due to the horror nature of the setting, but that's just window dressing. Thankfully, it wasn't used to cover up a bad game. But even saying that, I can't ever recall me being disappointed I didn't get it for a home format. The Mega Drive had a sequel, Splatterhouse 2, which is a different game, even though it looks the same, but as it's different, I didn't want to include it in this video. But there is one home format it came out on that always looked impressive in the magazine screenshots, and that was the PC Engine. I never owned a PC Engine at the time, but I do now, and while not strictly being a look back, I decided to fire it up and see what it was like on the little box of brilliance. This is Splatterhouse on the PC Engine, and I have to say this, the more I play games on this little console, the more I adore it. This is a fantastic port of the game, and when I seen it in magazines, I always thought it looked great, but now playing it, I can see it was a great game overall. The visuals are so well done, very close to the arcade, and I reckon in 1989, if I had seen this running on the PC Engine back then, I would have been bowled over for sure. Most of the details are in there, from the animation of the splatters and the water ripples to the creepy shaking room. I am actually very impressed with this. And let's not forget, PC Engine games came on these HuCard thingies with only 256 kilobytes of memory, and the PC Engine was using an 8-bit processor. So this was along the same tech lineage as the NES and Sega Master System, but there is no way those consoles could make this game look as good as this. The backgrounds are a tad disappointing. I think it's the lack of parallax scrolling on the PC Engine, but you can't have everything, right? The sound is odd. The tunes I think are pretty decent, although not a patch on the arcade, but the sound effects are pretty dire in my opinion, with some weird plug draining sounds in places, and the punching sounds like someone spitting, but saying that, it's not really putting me off playing the game. The playability of the game is spot on to the arcade in my opinion. The difficulty curve is good, and the controls are pretty responsive. I keep alluding to this, but had I seen this back in the day, I would be well impressed with the PC Engine. And actually, that reminds me of something. When I was growing up, there were a few video game import stores nearby. We had Computer Genius in Paisley, CA Games and Micro Direct in the West End of Glasgow, GeForce in the centre of Glasgow, and Video Exchange in the south side of Glasgow. And all of these places had imported Mega Drive, SNES, and in some cases Neo Geo games. They would eventually also have imported PlayStation, N64, Saturns and all that stuff. But not one of those stores, not one ever, had a PC Engine in there, and no PC Engine games either. All my years playing video games, and the first time I played a PC Engine game was in 2019 or something, when I got myself a PC Engine and an EverDrive for it. It's just weird, I never seen one of these in the shops, anywhere. Anyway, this version of Splatterhouse on the PC Engine is great, and I would encourage anyone to give it a go if they can do so. And as for the arcade, please give it a blast on MAME or something. It's just a great little game from the 80s and lots of fun. It's not very scary, in fact, it's not scary at all, but it is heaps of fun. And that was my look back at Splatterhouse. If you liked this video, then please do give me a sub and a thumbs up, or maybe even a comment or two below about your memories of Splatterhouse on any format. And a massive thank you to all those who have subscribed and commented on my channel. Your feedback and support really does go a long way in helping the channel grow, and I do appreciate all of your support, so thank you from me. And that's all from me, folks. Thanks for watching.